this on? Hello, everyone. Hi, Susan. I love your shirt. Okay. All right, this is like it's a party, so it's not like a traditional reading where you all need seats if you don't want them, but it's a mingled cocktail party, touting and celebrating the grottos, all the new books grotto members have published this year. And typically we do this little party inside the here it is. Okay. Okay. So typically we do this party in the grotto office, just internally amongst ourselves. But we thought it would be fun to bring it into the stacks of a bookstore in the city and make it, celebrate our books where books are sold at Green Apple and other independent bookstores. So thank you, Green Apple, for having us. Thank you to Standard Deviant for supplying beer, and Devil's Teeth Bakery for supplying cookies, and grotto members for supplying other cookies and wine and sparkling water, and Katie Butler, who decided to start a new tradition, which is very sweet. It's a pen. All new authors get a pen.
It's my favorite pen.
Oh, and it's Susan's favorite pen.
Katie gave it to me when my book came out.
Oh my gosh, so Susan was the first recipient of this pen. Oh, and Terry. So I never got a pen. Some special grotto authors apparently have received these pens in the past. And now all of the new grottos going forward forevermore will receive pens from Katie Butler. And what kind of pen is it, Katie?
Signo Uniball Impact 207. Highly recommended. Bold.
So apparently it's a great pen. All right, so tonight we're celebrating. Sometimes this party is supposed to be annual, but it's sort of, I don't know, annual-ish. Yeah. And so we are celebrating all the books published in 2024 by grotto members, and thus far in 2025. It's June, whatever date it is, 9th. So not everyone is in town. Not everyone's here. We had some last-minute emergencies. Everyone's okay. But those who could not be with us tonight, I'm going to just tell them who I know are not here. Here are their books. And some is Alex Quadros is a new grotto member. His book, When We Sold God's Eye, just came out a few months ago. He had a new baby a few months with his wife, like a few weeks ago, so he's not here. But his book is here, and it's a true story of diamonds, murder, and a clash of worlds in the Amazon. Woo! Starry Field by Margaret Juhé Lee, a memoir of lost history. And I'm sort of sold on just the cover alone. And it's a magnificent tapestry of memory, testimonial, and family history woven with a deft hand and abounding care. Lee's work is the most precious gift a writer has to offer, says Joseph Hahn, author of Nuclear Family. So there's that book. We also have Janine Cora, The Nutcracker Chronicles. She was one of the emergency... Kovac, sorry. She was had an emergency. She's okay. But she was Satchigan Beer. She wrote a memoir about her behind-the-scenes time mixed with... in the San Francisco Ballet, mixed with the Nutcracker tales, and it sounds as beautiful as the ballet itself. Mm-hmm. So, and then we also have Bonnie Toys on Muscle. Woo-woo! Just came out, and it's going gangbusters, as Why We Swim did as well. Yeah. And now we will start with our authors, and each author gets to go up for 3 minutes tops. Oliver, back from college, his first year, son of Pete, co-owner of Green Apple, will be your timer. Yay. And when your 3 minutes are up, he'll give you a little wave. No gong or nothing like... No hook. Yeah, no hook. Just very silent, respectable wave. So adhere to that. 3 minutes from Oliver. And I think that's it. Some people might have to leave early, so I think the first person that we're going to pick a name out of this bowl. And then when that person is done, they receive their pen from Katie. And they pick another name from the bowl, and then that author comes up and gives their 3-minute spiel about their book. Nice. Okay, so first up, Nina. Nina Schuyler. Okay. I answer to many things, but it's actually Nina. Nina, oh my God.
Schuyler. My book came out in July 2024, In This Ravishing World. I think you had questions. What's the book about? It's about the ecological disaster that's going on. Sounds like light reading. There's 9 different characters, including the voice of nature. So why did I do that? I wanted to try to build a bridge between the human-centric story and an other than human story, and to remind humans that they're part of a larger story. And I thought if I gave nature a voice, that we'd recognize something human in nature and care about it. So it took a long time to figure out nature's voice, but it weaves in and out of these 9 stories. And it's somewhat a short story collection. It's somewhat a novel. And I played with structure because I didn't want it one or the other, because I think the solution to climate change or climate crisis is collectivity and not a hero's journey. So this was the structure was very intentional, mimetic of what I think the solution will be. And then I had another question. Why did I write it? I was being annihilated by despair. And I thought, I better do something. What can I do? What do I know how to do? And I know how to write. So all my scientist friends said the only way to get out of despair is to do something. So during the pandemic, I started writing about nature. And it takes place in the Bay Area. So the characters just started proliferating and doing something so that I didn't get annihilated by grief and despair. It won the W.S. Porter Prize and the Prison Prize for Climate Literature. That's how it got published. An anecdote, we've had so many great conversations over this book, and it's just, that's, made standing in front of a group, wonderful, because someone would raise their hand. I started a pollinator garden, and someone else would, I want to do a pollinator garden. Like, how do you do it? And so all this conversation started happening. I am recycling, I forgot the service, Riddle or something. It's like, so all this conversation after I'd stopped talking and let them talk and ask questions. And it was a lot of sharing of what they are doing, and absolutely everything you do is meaningful to address the problem, however small it is. So it was just, I'd walk out of those rooms just glowing because a conversation had started. So that's been the most fun and meaningful thing for me, is the conversations that happen afterward. I've also done 2 fundraiser for environmental groups. One at the Climate Center in Santa Rosa to help raise money. They're into alternative energy. And then I've worked for years with a group called Children for Change, which is essentially giving agency to children and forming little Gretas, so that we have children that believe that they can do something good in the world and change it. So I think I've done that for 10 years. So I've done a fundraiser for them. Thank you.
And before Nina goes, it reminds me that I forgot the key point of the Grotto tradition, Nina, before you leave. You have to step up on this stool. So that is supposed to, here we go.
There, yeah.
Basically, when you publish a book at the Grotto, you jump up at on the coffee table in the office, and to replicate the coffee table, I had this stool, but I forgot to say jump up on it.
I have to jump?
Well, you can just,
No, don't do that.
you don't have to.
You can stop.
You can just say, yay!
And the pen. That's why I came tonight, the pen.
Oh, and then pick a name out of the bowl.
Oh. Grace.
You're going the wrong way. She's fleeing.
Yay! Heather wanted a little runway walk.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Grace Loprasad, and this is my book, The Translator's Daughter, which came out a little over a year ago, on the same day as 3 other Grotto members. So, Margaret Lee, Carolyn Paul, and Katie Flynn. We all had books come out the same day, March 5th. So it's called The Translator's Daughter because my dad was a Bible translator, and his job took us to a couple of different countries. We ended up leaving Taiwan, where I was born, when I was 2 years old, and then I grew up in New Jersey, and then I grew up partly in Hong Kong. and I went to the American school in Hong Kong, and therefore I lost the language of my parents. So that's kind of what the book is about. And an interesting thing, actually, about since the book has come out, is that so both of my parents have passed away, and my brother passed away, and some of that is covered in this book. So it's about, being a daughter in the diaspora, about living far from my family, about losing my family members, at the same time that I'm trying to actually reconnect and create a stronger bond with my homeland, with my birthplace. But what was interesting about going on tour with the book and meeting people is that I actually met people that knew my parents or knew of my parents, that weren't necessarily connected to me or in my communities and social media. And that has been one of the most rewarding things. And just like an interesting, funny little anecdote, in one of the chapters, I talk about my childhood in New Jersey and the fact that, I was like a little kid, okay? And so there weren't a lot of Taiwanese or Chinese people where we lived. There weren't a lot of Asians. And so I was trying to describe what Asia or what being Asian meant to me as a young child growing up in a mostly white community. And I remember there was one summer, a guy who drove our local ice cream truck. And his name was Herman. He was Chinese American. And he was like a few years older than my brother. And I had this kind of like very childish thought, which is, oh, he looks kind of like me. Maybe we're related. Like maybe we're cousins. And so I did this kind of thing that kids do, which is like trying to claim my street cred and be like, Herman's my cousin. So anyway, but a few months ago, an incredible thing happened to me. So on Facebook, someone reached out who had read my book, somebody on the East Coast. And she said, oh, it was amazing. I read this book and you wrote that little thing about Herman, the ice cream truck driver. And I thought, wow, what a coincidence, because my brother, who was Chinese American, lived in New Jersey, drove an ice cream truck in the 1970s. And I thought, yeah, total coincidence. And then I was like, wait, how many people could there be named Herman, Chinese American, drove an ice cream truck in the 1970s in New Jersey? And so that was his sister, who reached out to me and found me, like 50 years later. So anyway, that's my book. Thank you.
Okay. The next
your
reader.
autograph.
Thank you. Thank you.
Writer.
Okay. Tara Durabji.
Hey, thank you so much. It's wonderful to see everyone. And I'm so grateful to the Grotto for all the support. This is my debut novel, Call Her Freedom. And if you're interested in purchasing it, you can request Green Apple that they carry it. And it took me about 14 years to create this novel. I was lucky enough to win the Books Like Us Award, which is actually open for submissions right now. We're about to open for a 2-week period. And at the heart of this book is the question, how do people live in freedom when their rights are eroded? And I went to Indian occupied Kashmir to really investigate that question. And the book came into the world the day after the inauguration. And so that question has become increasingly relevant with every day, as we have Marines deployed in Los Angeles, even currently. And the research took on a life of its own. So I became an accidental filmmaker. The second time I went to Kashmir, I went with a documentary film crew. We had to film in this really small room with the fan off so we could get good sound. And one of the young women I talked to, one of the things she said was, my dad was killed. And when I grew up, I wanted to become a militant to avenge him. And as she got older and she met the human rights group, she started to learn about their work. And actually became a social advocate instead and turned her rage and anger into something productive. And one of the things she did is she worked with women. There was over 20 women who were gang raped by the Indian Army in 2 villages. And she worked documenting their stories and bringing that to the highest court to try to find justice for them. Still, there is no justice, even though they know the perpetrators have names. And I was so deeply moved by how sometimes the injustice can turn to rage that causes more harm, and sometimes the deepest injustices can lead us more to love. And as I started to write the novel and let the characters take over, Aisha, a young girl who starts out in a small village and living with her mom, and these 2 women living alone in a village dominated by men, it was love that moored them. And as they found more and more difficulties as the land became occupied, they had to turn to their love and their hope to find the way.
Best ever.
This is so fun. Stephanie.
It's very daunting looking at you all from this angle, I have to say. Well, I have had 3 books come out. How crazy is that? So the first one, Breath by Breath, in Spanish, is Respiro a Respiro, so it's 5 books if you count the Spanish translation. The illustrator is a Stephanie Arazo. Look at this wonderful art. And this is, I like to say, a bedtime or anytime story to help a child or a grown-up relax and go to sleep. I have grown-up friends who read it because it features the twins, Flor and Roberto, and their big brother, Luis, and their characters who were in the previous book, Treasure Hunt. And then Flor and Roberto and Luis are back for Ghostwriter, Escritor Fantasma, co-author Cecilia Populus Uyudave, and again, a Stephanie Arazo illustrating. And so now I have a series of books about these characters. Ghostwriter is a Halloween Dia de los Muertos story that was inspired by a grandson who, for months, every time I would call, he would say to me, "Grandma, do you know Julio died?" Julio was the family's pet Boston Terrier. And the book was really my love letter to help my grandson process that loss. And then, from a different publisher, came Mary's Moving Day. The co-author is Adam Ryan Chang, and the illustrator is Dream Chen. And this book was inspired by a different grandson's question, who said at the dinner table, "Can I be Chinese and Jewish?" And his father said, "Yes, because you are." But representation matters, as we all know. And Miri is Chinese American and Jewish and facing a big day moving from the only home that she's ever known. Her grandfathers, Yeye and Zaidi, share with her some cultural touchstones to help her through this moving adventure. So I know that we're only talking about books that have already come out, but I just got my box of the next Flora and Roberto and Luis book. And I figured it would appeal to writers because it's called Story Power. And it's inspired by yet another grandson who is my co-author, Simon Wildman Chung. Thank you. I don't know about this stepping up thing.
5 times, actually, Stephanie.
I knew I could trust. All right. Brad.
So I want to thank Rachel Levin for doing the heavy lifting of putting this all together. Thank you, Rachel. And I want to thank Katie for the very generous idea, the fun idea of the pens. That's a great touch. So my book, The Six Pack on the Open Road in Search of WrestleMania. When I was about 5 years old, I was a weird kid that liked a weird thing called pro wrestling. And I was so weird that my favorite wrestler was this character named the Iron Sheik. Now, you got to remember, this is the 80s. It was okay to play on xenophobia openly. There was no political correctness. So Hulk Hogan was the all-American good guy, and the Iron Sheik was evil just because he was from Iran. And because no one liked him, I liked him because I never followed the crowd. And so I had my Iron Sheik action figure, my Iron Sheik notepad, and my Iron Sheik pillowcase. And just so you know, the first line of the six-pack is, I know we weren't supposed to do a reading, but I'm going to do one-line reading.
Do whatever you want with your time. Yeah. Time is
First line, 2005, Fayetteville, Georgia. The Iron Sheik just threatened to kill me. And so it's this. That's the backstory. That's true. He gave me choices about how he wanted to kill me. And then 17 years later, I went on the road to find him again and the other wrestlers that were there the night he became the champion and kind of tell the story of who these guys are in real life and to the extent that they became their characters. And with that, I will donate my other 90 seconds to Donald because he's a very entertaining storyteller. Oh, the pen!
take his name out so he doesn't.
June.
Oh, yeah. I'm not. Oh.
I did. I said it. I still own it.
Dom, you're.
Oh, okay. And June's up.
All right. So you'll wait for your name to be called.
Huh? Yeah, I gotta find my. Wait. Oh, I could. Yeah, or Dom can go.
I see Pinoy Mafia in the house.
Pinoy Mafia in the house.
Wait, Dom, after
Yeah.
you go get June. Keep going.
Okay, June. Okay. Oh, June. Yeah.
You go and then June.
Are you sure? You want to go now?
You're already there.
Okay, I wrote this book, Karaoke Queen. It was under contract, so I had to write it. It was a 2-book contract, to be honest. And when I sold it, it was part of my contract, and I asked my husband to like come up with an idea for a second book, and he was like, do this, and I was like, okay, and I wrote it, and I sent it to them, and then the time came to have to write it, and I was like, oh shit, I have to write this book. So, but I did write this. There are a couple things that made me want to write this book, which is a queer rom-com. It's called Karaoke Queen, about a ex-drag queen who goes back into drag to save his ex-boyfriend's bar in Oakland called the Pink Unicorn. And I wanted to write a book because because I've always been interested in the idea, being a gay man, being a gay Asian man, growing up at the time that I did. I don't know if any of you remember this, no fats, no femmes, no Asians on the gay dating websites, that you don't want to be Asian, you don't want to be femme. And so it was this idea of like, could I do a romantic comedy where the main character is both Asian and feminine? And the answer, I think, is yes. So if you buy the book, maybe you can see for yourself. But also the other thing too is that in the Philippines, there's this really wonderful movie called The Blossoming of Maxi Oliveros that came out in the early 2000s about this little feminine Filipino boy who basically falls in love with a police officer. But the wonderful thing about it is he's very feminine and he takes care of his entire family, and who are all these macho older males in the family. And that's just who he is. And like, they just see him and he's just like their mom, or he's the mother figure. And it's interesting how in the Philippines, we have this concept of bakla. You could be sort of like a third gender, where it's okay to be gay if you're feminine. Now, I know this is changing, but back in the day, it was like, and I think this is true for a lot of Asian countries, where it's okay to be gay if you're feminine. So, but if you're masculine, that's not okay. So I wanted to play with these ideas, like, what does it mean to be feminine, masculine, in drag, Asian, a romantic comedy lead, and put it like in a book that's filled with, Filipino culture and humor, and see what happens and mix it all up. So it's basically a book for anyone who wants to laugh, who's into RuPaul's Drag Race, and who just wants something frilly and fun, but also there is something a couple levels below if you read into it. So anyway, that's Karaoke Queen. And it's also on sale at Apple. If you want the audiobook, there's currently a sale going on Apple audiobooks. And I mention that because the audiobook is read by Manila Luzon, who, if you know drag, she is like the most famous Filipino drag queen, I think, in the world. So it was a total coup to get her to be the narrator, and I'm so proud of that fact, and I'm proud of this book. And I hope you like it or recommend it to people who might like it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm here to talk about Love Aggression, my book that came out last year. It is a half surreal story of transgender animosity in strange houses. Now, what do I mean by half surreal? One time I heard the Romanian author Mircea Cărărescu, an author of surrealism, say that fabulism and realism are two sides of a Mobius strip, and I took that personally. I wrote a story where, with two dueling viewpoints, best friends and roommates who have a falling out, both trans women, one of them takes a very surreal journey through a metamorphizing house. She works at a tattoo parlor where the tattoo gun can change people's shapes. But the other character is in a story where the world is very, very mundane, but she is a deranged actress with delusions of grandeur. And the reason why I wrote it like this is because this is a book about queer community conflict and trans community conflict. And the way that conflict often plays out is by the propagation of two mutually exclusive definitions of the reality of that conflict, and then a power struggle over whose definition of that reality wins. So I wanted to tell a story that captured that, and captured that structurally in the form of a loose picaresque that eventually pulls in more and more and more material as it eventually coalesces to a point at the end. Because I love strange story structures. I'm a structure pervert.
I love it.
And the reason why I want to do that for a trans book is, I think from about 2014 onward, past the transgender tipping point, there was a certain mode of doing trans literature, which I call the trans sociological novel, which is a realist mode of storytelling where it's here's who we are, here's the struggles that we face, here's what being us is really like. And that was a perfectly fine mode of storytelling literature for that political moment and for that moment in our lives as trans people. But that moment has changed dramatically. And I think trans art and queer art in this moment of escalating backlash has to change too. It has to break from the depiction of reality in order to expand, in order to tell stories that are impossible to tell within our constraints. And I'm getting the very polite wave, so that's it for me.
Thank you. Yeah. Congratulations.
It's not quite a coffee table, but it'll do. All right, next up is Ariel.
Thanks. That was a fun. Hi. So my book is Rehearsals for Dying, Digressions on Love and Cancer, and I started writing this book just a couple days after, my wife was like, does my breast look weird? And I knew like within a couple days that it was going to be bad. And so I was writing this memoir in real time, and I write everything that happens to me, kind of. So my wife already knew, well, a couple months later when she realized it was going to be bad, knew that I was going to write a book about it. And so it was important to her also to, have some control over her legacy and be a part of the writing. So I wrote it in a document that she had access to. And, the main argument about the book we were having in hospice was that she did not want to die in the book. But that was just because she didn't want to die. But I thought, I think I have time to do a very short reading, because I have short chapters, and this one's only 1 page. It's called Shrooming. Friends kept giving us magic mushrooms because they'd read that psilocybin pushed back against death anxiety, but Dina recoiled at the smell of them. I shrugged. Mind if I do? She opened her palms. Enjoy. The shrooms tasted just as much like a sweaty butthole as I remembered from the last time I'd eaten them in 10th grade. But this time, after about an hour, when I snuggled into bed, the Mona Lisa reproduction sparkled from the wall. Are you feeling better about death? Dina deadpanned. And that made both of us laugh for a very long time. Then we were quiet. I stared at the Mona Lisa reproduction, trying psychically to communicate with her. She stayed silent the way she does, and that's when I noticed her expression change ever so slightly. Dina rolled a joint, stood up to open the window, took a few hits. I watched her silhouette against the sunset, tried to picture the sunset without her form in front of it. What do you think it's like? What do I think what's like? She put the joint out in a tiny ashtray. Death. Dina stayed silent like the reproduction. Was it inappropriate to name the thing we were trying to evade? If femininity was death, like Barbara Ehrenreich had gathered, did death itself have the scent of a woman, a color? Was death a white light or endless darkness? Was there any such thing as a clean or honorable or dignified death? What might happen if we took our eyes off the rattlesnake of it? Thank you. And also, I have 3 bookmarks that say death is coming, read more books. So you can have one. Oh, and I have to stand up on this thing despite my shoes. And well, you already went. Heather.
I want a Soul Train line for everybody. Before I forget, I'm also here representing Ma Shane Wynn, who is teaching in Dominican, and her amazing collection of poetry, Percussing the Thinking Jar, came out last year. Buy every copy now. And Susan, you can verify that I gave a shout out to her. So I have now 2 minutes for mine. Okay, it's a very short book, so it's going to be a short little prep. It's Hungry Gods and Other Matters of Conscience. They're flash fiction pieces. So every one, except for one, is under 1,000 words. One story's 2,000 words. It's perfect reading for waiting for the subway, waiting for the whatever, waiting for Godot. And it's, Josh is in the back. He's the publisher from The Fabulist. And I believe they are open for submissions right now. They also have a copy of the book that came out last year, Monarch. So, if you want to get your poetry on, it's Overlooked Histories of the U.S. West.
This does deal with tyranny in many different forms. I encourage you to read my breasts. You're going to anyway, so I might as well put lettering on it. Foster love, fight tyranny. This is a coup. Get in the streets. Fuck ICE. I believe I was one of the first people to get a pen when this came out. So thank you. I have a pen.
Oh, okay.
You gotta get on this.
You gotta stand up. Yay!
And still fuck ICE. Okay. Con!
Hi, everybody. It's so lovely to see you all. My novel that came out in April is Down in the Sea of Angels, and it is pitched as a time-hopping dystopian fantasy about psychic powers, liberation, and our interconnectedness through time. And it is set in San Francisco, and it takes place in 3 historical eras. There's a historical fiction piece that is set in 1906, and the main character is a sex-trafficked girl in a Chinatown brothel. And the real-life figure of Donaldina Cameron, who, if you do not know, was a missionary who worked in Chinatown at the time, freeing girls from the brothel, and the organization, the house that she established to do that work, exists to this day. So there's a bit of San Francisco history in that. The second storyline is set in 2006, and the main character is a queer Chinese-American man who's a tech designer and a Burning Man aficionado, and comes to see the wastefulness of his lifestyle, and by extension, the culture that we live in. And then the main story is set in 2106, and San Francisco is highly transformed due to the effects of climate change. The United States and Canada no longer exist as nation states. California, Washington, Oregon, and British Columbia have formed their own regional alliance. In that timeline, a cosmic event that people have come to call the Bloom has happened, and that activates in the subset of humanity psionic abilities, which include telepathy, telekinesis, all the clairs, clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, etc. And also an ability called psychometry, which the main character has, and if you are not aware, it is when a person can hold an object, touch an object, and know its whole history, who's owned it, where it's been, and all of that. And it is that ability and her encounter with a teacup, which is on the cover, so that's not a spoiler, that connects the 3 narratives. And so I was inspired to write this book, partly like I wanted to work in different aspects of Chinese American history and the Chinese American community's various stories. But I was also, I'm kind of a structure nerd. And so I was really, and this book was, in case you haven't picked up yet, highly influenced by Cloud Atlas. But also just as influenced by my love of the X-Men comic books. So this was like I wanted to mash up historic fiction and contemporary slice of life and future sci-fi with literary aspirations, although some might say pretensions, as well as my love of like pulpy stuff. So that's this book.
Nice.
Thank you so much. All right, next up, Caroline Paul.
So my book came out in March of 2024, and I'm actually going to be really short because all my books have really long subtitles, and they pretty much says everything. So this book is Tough Broad, From Bird Watching to Base Jumping, How Outdoor Adventure Improves Our Lives as We Age. So thank you. And we have Samantha. Sam.
Here.
Oh.
Upside down.
Oh, sorry.
It's cute on a pen.
All right, thanks, Rachel. My book is My Mother's Boyfriends. It's a collection of stories. It's populated by a lot of mother-daughter relationships, a lot of brother-sister relationships, other familial relations, people trying to be good when goodness is elusive and unclear. There's a woman writing letters to the wife of her lover. There's a mother who's grown angel wings overnight. There's an artist caught in the aftermath of a San Francisco earthquake, walking the streets with a man she barely knows. There's a grad student screwing the custodian of her building. There are long-lost sisters who find each other via a DNA test, one of those spit in the tube kind of tests. There's a Great Dane giving birth to puppies. This book has like the longest, sloggiest, saddest, filled with woe story of publication. Just so you know, the one story in here was published in Ziziva in 1998. So it was the runner-up for a lot of really big prizes, but it never won. And a year after being turned down by 713 Press, the publisher, Leland Chuck, called me and told me he hadn't been able to stop thinking about my book, and asked if it was still available. And it was still available, because of course it was. And the rest is history, and I'm really proud of this book. I've been writing a lot of stuff for many years, but this is the book I've been writing during that time all along. And yeah, I'm really proud of the book. So thanks. All right, Terry.
Thank you. I'm Terry. And my book is called Why Trees Stay Outside. And the story of this book actually goes back a little bit farther. Back when I was a very, very, very young and immature 71. my first book was published, and that book had poems that spanned about 40 years. And I had published in a lot of literary magazines, but I never really thought that I would have a book. And my wife and I were actually at the Kansas State Fair. And we were walking through the Kansas State Fair, and my phone beeped, and I looked, and there was an email from Unsolicited Press that they accepted my book. And I started crying in the middle of the Kansas State Fair. And there was people kind of beeping at me, in their scooter carts, these 300 or 400 pound people, they're eating their, deep fried Twinkies and so forth, and trying to get me out of the way. But, I realized that there's no reason for me to be embarrassed, because I never see any of them again anyway. And so one of the big jokes I had when that book came out is that, based on my normal writing speed, that my second book would probably come out around 2060. So somehow I ended up I beat that schedule. And I think the reason is the pandemic and all the social justice issues that were coming up. I just found myself unable to concentrate on anything but writing poems for a few years. And so I wrote this book, an amazing speed for me, a period of about 6 or 7 years. And that's kind of the story of the book. The title for the book actually comes from my son when he was, I was taking him to preschool one morning and it was raining and he said, "Daddy, why do trees stay outside?" So that was the beginning of this book. Thank you very much. The next reader is Eleanor.
Wow, well, it's so great to see everybody. Big thanks to Green Apple, to the Grotto, and our wonderful community, and to Rachel for doing the heavy lifting, as someone else said. Much appreciated. So, this is my book that came out in November of 2024, 6 days after Donald Trump was elected for a second time. And in that moment, I was not a happy camper, but honestly, this book takes so many things that I was trying to cope with and crams them into one pretty fast-paced narrative. Because Vine Leaves Press, my publisher, only publishes things that are around 50,000 words. So this book is 53,000 words. And unlike my first book, which is closer to 80,000, I was very determined to write a funny book on my second book, because this book about the death of my daughter is pretty tragic. I mean, there's a few anecdotes in it that make me smile. But when I started this book, it was not called Disconnected. It was called Better Late. And it was going to be a kind of little Nora Ephron, funny thing about two older people falling in love, and they're so quirky, and they dance together. And then those two people end up getting married without one of the partners really realizing that her partner is actually on the autism spectrum. In the middle of the book, the title changed to Space and Grace, and that was after 3 failed rounds of therapy and working with an autism coach who used the term space and grace. That's what you guys need to give each other. Space and grace, stop the bleeding, just take a break. And at that point, I still had hope. And I was working very hard to try to save the marriage. Then at a certain point in the writing, I realized, whoops, no, not happening. It became Disconnected. And there are funny parts, I promise. But there are also very sad parts. And I guess I'm just destined to write sad books. Anyway, I'm very, very glad I wrote this book. And I've learned a ton during the whole process by watching other people. And there are people in this room who are so good at marketing. I'll just call out Susan Ito and Grace Prasad and Dom and so many people, honestly, that I've learned from through my it's 10 years at the Grotto now. Wow. So thank you all for showing me tricks, tips, how to persist. It's so helpful. And somebody on my Amazon little page wrote this. Eleanor Vincent is on a mission to help those of us who may be partnered with a person who is neurodivergent, but we don't realize it at first. Or as our own Julia Shears wrote in her cover blurb, wow, this is an important book. So it's talking about something that's tender and difficult and partly funny, but also very sad. And I think bringing to light the intimate workings of a relationship where one person is autistic and the other person is not, and what that looks like in terms of the communication and the misfires. And some of that is kind of funny, and some of it is really, really sad. So I continue to look at parts of this book and read it and go, wow, did that really happen? And yes, it really happened, because I write the real world. And that's the name of my Substack, by the way, Writing the Real World. So, check me out. Yeah, thanks. Oh, by the way, it just won an honorable mention in the Eric Hofer Awards, which I'm completely thrilled about. Maxine.
Okay, I'm Maxine Rose Shore, and I write children's books, and I also write travel literature. But last year I had 2 kids' books come out, and they couldn't be more different. The first one is a young adult novel. It's called Star Brother, and let me tell you how I got this idea. I was thinking to myself, now, what would it be like if you were walking down the street and you saw the 5-year-old version of yourself, or the 7-year-old version, or the 12-year-old version coming the opposite direction? Would you recognize that person? That person would be in contemporary dress, not the way you dressed when you were that kid, and you probably wouldn't. And so that sort of tickled my fancy. I got this idea for this story. I saw it as a high concept movie. And basically, it's a story about an emotionally closed down foster kid who has no idea who his family is. He doesn't have a single family member, and he's been shunted from one fairly abusive foster home to the next one. When he's 15, he's a genius in science, particularly in holography. And when he's about 15, he finds out he has a brother. And the brother is not only a brother, but it's an identical twin. And it's not only an identical twin, but it's an identical twin who's 60 years older than he is. And at first, this very idea just repulses him. But then, little by little, they bond and they go on an adventure. They go on a road trip, which is kind of a race against time. I'm not going to tell you the whole plot of the thing. But the book encompasses a lot of adventure, a lot of suspense, mystery, a little bit of gothic, romance. Everything's thrown in there. I was thrilled that it got a very good review on Kirkus. They called it a wild ride with plenty of heart. And so this is Star Brother. And I still think of it as a high concept movie. The other book, now for something a little different, is called A Tale of Bread and Thread. And this is an idea that came to me many years ago, as did the story for this. Sometimes you just have to let ideas percolate. And so this is the story of the very worst baker in the world, okay? It's beautifully, hilariously illustrated by an artist in Naples, Cristina D'Aliso. And it starts with a little poem. This is a tale of bread and thread made up from crumbs and stitches, how a penniless baker, along with his wife, went from rags to riches. So this is the worst baker in the world. Everything he bakes comes out just terrible. I mean, his cookies turn out into crumbs, his donuts are like doorknobs. And then you might ask yourself, well, what about his wife? Couldn't she have made some money somehow? No. She was the worst seamstress in the world, okay? Once, the poor woman sewed Mr. Grump's coat to Widow Crank's shawl, and since neither customer could agree where to separate the garment, they decided to marry and share the darn thing. Well, anyway, what happens is the king comes to the village, and he commands the baker's wife to sew a beautiful handkerchief for him. And he commands the baker to bake a very special bread. And of course, their handiwork goes awry, and a terrible thing happens. The bread goes out of control. It takes over the city. He put too much yeast in it. I mean, it's a lot of fun for kids because it turns into a great big blob. But what happens at the end of the story, it's not a sad ending, actually, because what happens at the end of the story is that the baker decides to take up the needle and thread, and he finds out, wow, he's really good at sewing. And the baker's wife decides, well, she's got a real talent for baking. And so they become very, very successful. And so this book was written as a kind of an affirmation for children. It ends with this poem. This story wasn't meant to teach, to give a moral, or to preach, but there's a secret, and it's true. It's one I want to tell, just you. Beneath your thoughts and in your heart lie secret talents and hidden art. Try your hand at something new. Discover things that you can do. They're hiding right inside of you. Things you never knew you knew. So that's A Tale of Bread and Thread. Thank you. All right. And the next person is Color.
I'm afraid of heights.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Suzine. Yes, I realize it's very daunting when you see it, and it's like, yeah. Also, I figured I was going to be last. I was like, Keanu, right? We want to close the night with Keanu. So, yeah. So, I'm the author of Much Ado About Keanu, A Critical Reeves Theory. This is the first ever in-depth sociocultural study of the one and only magnificence that is Keanu Reeves. Yes. And yes, praise. And a question I get asked a lot, the biggest question I get asked is, why Keanu? And I, in fact, did not set out to write a book about Keanu Reeves. I actually wanted to write a book about River Phoenix. I don't know if some of you all from the 90s, but he was this incredible actor, artist who died way too young. And I, have this idea for an oral history of his life. And when I realized what a huge undertaking it was and the place I was in my career, it was too much to try and do at that time. And so I kind of got really depressed about it. And as most of my books come to me in dreams, and so I woke up one night with this thought running through my head that Keanu Reeves is the River Phoenix who lived. And it just stayed, and it was just echoing. Keanu Reeves is the River Phoenix who lived. And I was like, what does that even mean? And so as I started working on the book, the outline just poured out of me in a matter of a couple hours. And if you look at River Phoenix's catalog and you look at Keanu's, there is a through line there. It's amazing. River would have been an action star. He would have been a romantic lead. He would have been an indie darling. He was the nicest person, right? All of that. And so, so I ended up instead of writing about River, I wrote about his best friend, which I think River would have loved as well. And, so this book is dedicated to River, actually. And so it's kind of my audition to River's family to try and actually do the oral history of River Phoenix. So that's my plan. My next plan is to approach his family, and I'm working on a letter for his mom. I'm going to handwrite it and send her a whole care package and see what happens. And I'm just going to keep writing to her until she says yes or no. And we're just that's I don't know. I feel like I'm supposed to do that book. So so that's the first question that we get asked a lot. And then the other question I get asked all the time is, have I met Keanu? And this is a most excellent story. So, yes, so I have met Keanu. I've met him, I think, 5 times now. Wow. My time is almost up. So, yes, I have met Keanu. And he is as delightful as you imagine. He has the book. So I gave him the book, and he was very humble about the whole thing. And his band actually played a song for me at the end of their tour. So, he's really the nicest person. So, thank you. Oh my God. Seriously, this thing frightens me. I broke my elbow last year. If I fall. Oh my God. Why was that so scary? Thank you. Thanks so much.
Okay, wait, before you go, all the new authors, come on up for a big group grotto photo. Don't go away. And also, I just want to say, as they're coming up, that I feel like as the grotto is more and more of an online community, even though we have a great office with a view in the city, it's so nice to put literally stories to names and to see everyone come alive on the page and to know more about all of you and all of your books. And they're all for sale tonight at Green Apple. So buy them.
Look up here. Please look up here. Okay. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Raise your hands. Hold your books in front of you. Okay. Thank you. Woo!